Behind the Hooks. With Manny DeGrandis. And Daniel Panetta.
And we are back.
Here we is.
Here's we are.
Yes, and in December.
It's December. It's late. It's late for us. It's past our bedtime. We're being all rebellious.
Yeah. So we're doing some what do they call it?
Pre-recordings.
Pre-recording.
But all of our stuff is pre-recorded.
Thinking ahead.
Looking ahead. Before we start, I do want to say a big thank you to those of you listening and watching. It's been so fun. We've had a lot of great interviews. We've had a lot of great times coming up to the holiday season and into the new year. When we restarted this, we didn't know if we'd be able to retain some, the listeners that we had at the last show. But we've gotten some great responses and some people that really depend on our show being out every week, and they find joy in it, and they watch it over dinner, they listen to us on their way to work. I like the fact when I schedule these, I schedule them to be out on midnight on the Monday, so that people can listen to it on their way to work in the morning and stuff like that.
Start your Monday morning with us, because Mondays suck.
Mondays are brutes. So, thank you for listening to us and allowing us to let you start your week off with the right foot.
Yeah, it's really hard because we it was a big thing. Like, what day do we release the show weekly?
Because we used to do Tuesdays. It was every Tuesday.
I think it ended up being Tuesdays, and then
by accident.
And then this one here, and then this one here, you're like, oh, let's do Mondays.
Yeah,
because Mondays are good. Musician thoughts, right? Like we're like just like hosting a jam night. When do you host a jam night? Definitely not Thursday, Friday, Saturday, because
right.
Yeah,
I found with releases, you always want to do it top of the week or the very end of the week. So, but with podcasts, it's different because it sets up the week. Yeah. Whereas if you're doing a music release, it'll set up the weekend. So
I still find, I remember growing up that the albums would get released on a Tuesday.
Yes.
In the music stores. But now people are dropping their songs on a Friday. And is that the reason? Is it like, okay, you're in a better mood on a Friday?
Well, there's more opportunities for it being added to playlists if it's on a Friday release, because then you have weekend with playlists, you have Friday playlists.
Okay.
Summer, it'll be on summer playlists if it's released on a Friday in the summertime. You don't want to be part of a Monday playlist. That's a hard sell.
Okay, yeah, and I guess you have the weekend too. There's more time on the weekend to listen to a song than a podcast. Because you're not thinking of us on a Saturday unless if you're thinking of watching us play.
Right. Podcasts, man.
We're learning, so you can help us.
I see some people go out and they do like daily podcast releases, and kudos, by the way, because that's a lot of work, and that's a lot of dedication and patience that I don't have. But I think podcasts, we don't really treat this like a podcast. I treat this a lot like, we talked about this a little bit, I treat this a lot like satellite radio. So yes, it's great, you can see us, but video is not my priority. I like to think of this as like we're in studio doing like a broadcasting thing.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I don't think we understand even podcasts more as podcasters.
No,
I think we understand broadcasters more.
We want to pitch things. We want to do things like that. Like, comedians do the best podcasts because their job is talking to people. Our job is playing for people. And but when we do these shows, we're talking to each other, and we just happen to have people eavesdropping on us. That's pretty much what it is. Yeah. But I don't know. Does it feel like that for you? Like
exactly.
It's just, we're just having a conversation. There happen to be microphones in our faces.
Exactly, and it's fun. It's fun to chat about things and get vent or or find that you have stories that are exactly the same as mine.
Well, yeah. I mean, this is a good
Musically,
opportunity
right?
even too for us to like get to know each other on that level because we come from different instrumental backgrounds,
Yeah.
but our experiences are very very much the same. But do you find like speaking in podcast, and I will preface this with I am segueing so hard right now. Do you find that this podcast helps you get things off your chest that you wouldn't otherwise have an opportunity to do?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And I feel like in my mind, I'm like, if I tell, if I complain about something or talk about something, I feel like another musician would be like, I went through that too. Or is that what you're feeling? Or is that like, yeah. It's funny because when we first started in the podcast, it was just like whatever. But now I'm doing a little bit more driving, and I've been listening to podcasts, right? A lot of them were bass oriented podcasts that I wanted to catch up on.
Mm-hmm.
Just hear cool, I want to hear what Billy Sheehan's got to say. I'm like, oh, it's still the same stuff, and it's still amazing. I love him.
Yeah.
And if I interview him, I'd want the same questions and answers. And then I started going a little bit more into. I started going to Joe Rogan interviewing musicians.
Those are interesting interviews.
Yeah.
Because I've said it before, comedians and musicians aren't very different when it comes to the work ethic. Joe Rogan interviewing musicians makes me happy as a musician because he asks the right questions.
Yeah, and I find that it's just funny because then I watched him, listened to him interview Dave Chappelle and how much music they talked about. Like Dave Chappelle, everybody knows that Dave Chappelle is a huge music fan and
Not just a music fan, he's a hip hop and jazz fan.
Yeah.
That guy quotes Miles Davis like it's nobody's business. Yeah. I consider Dave Chappelle a musician. I'd be happy to bring him into our world.
Isn't the freaking Dave Chappelle show when they're doing the half breeds, and they're like the white and the black thing.
Yeah,
and they're like, what is it called? Because I know the more I talk, the more I'm gonna probably dig a hole.
Yeah, no,
get canceled.
I'm giving you a shovel.
What is it? What is it? The Olympics. The Tiger Woods was there. Oh my God! Only Dave Chappelle could get away with it. I can't.
But that's the thing. Dave Chappelle has.
But that wasn't my point. I just got me sidetracked.
I'm sorry.
But I feel like comedians are jazz musicians because they're improvising, right?
Sometimes, yeah. It's basically they're reading you're right. Because yes, every show is different. Every response is different. And they have to navigate their joke to the response that they're getting from their lead up, right? Whereas improvising, so if you're a jazz player and you're improvising on a tune, the changes aren't changing, but how you're adapting the changes. I think of I'm in the mood for love and Moody's Mood for Love. Same tune, but you have two separate songs based on a solo and based on what the track actually is. And when you have comedy and comedians going up on stage, it doesn't matter if they're on a tour of that show, no two shows are going to be the same.
I treat it like vocal banter, like a singer's banter in between songs. And even, even with our band, now we're back to playing. We've, same sort of set list, every band kind of plays, but some nights we play certain songs different ways. And the banter in between songs that you have to do is different. That's 100% different.
Totally.
Right?
I'm not going to tell certain jokes that I know an audience that's in front of me isn't going to understand. Because I usually talk about when we do Kiss.
Yeah.
And I'll do the duet between Tom Jones and Prince. And in certain situations, that won't work, and I'll just do Prince's version, and just stick to the the basics of that. But in other situations, if everybody's like drunk, or like it's the kind of crowd that's like, it's like a storyteller's kind of thing. Yeah, I'm gonna pull that one out and just kind of have fun with it a little bit. But there's only even certain things that I'll only do right now because of COVID. Like in superstition, it's very superstitious, wash your face and hands, and I'll be like, you better, because of COVID. And like people will get a kick out of that, right? And so it's always going to be different, and it's one of those things you have to play out. But going back to Chappelle, I don't think he gives a shit. If you're listening to him, you've paid money to listen to his opinions on things. And he reminds me a lot of Miles Davis that way. Because Miles was very much about like being true to the cool, and how he played. Miles's phrasing, I should say, reminds me of Dave Chappelle, or vice versa, I should say, because the way that Dave Chappelle puts his pauses allows you to absorb what just happened. Miles was really good at doing
He's
that.
king of, oh my God, Miles is king of pauses.
Yeah, knowing when not to play.
He I think finally brought in silence is golden and space.
Yeah, you got to
and all
remember,
that.
he was coming out of an era of like Charlie Parker and John Coltrane, where like playing in your face, just shredding basically on a saxophone.
Well, that brings me to a thought right now. So maybe some of you are going to go and on Spotify and type in Miles Davis. Do you remember being a kid and being like, what's a Miles Davis? And then you run
What's
to
a Miles Davis?
And then you run to the record store and you're like, can I have a Miles Davis, please?
One large Miles Davis, extra
Right?
fries.
Really? I think that's, and then
That's not wrong.
and then this is why the greatest hits, and we talked about this a couple weeks ago with Leo, was invented, because but with jazz it just doesn't work, and certain things, but like you just hope, like, and I know I've heard so many horror stories of like grabbing the wrong Hendrix CD, grabbing the wrong Miles CD, because or Coltrane, like Miles Coltrane made some of the greatest music ever made. And then they've also made some of the craziest, hardest to listen to.
Oh, it's that avant-garde kind of jazz that they started experimenting with.
So like if you buy like Bitches Brew, like great.
You're not going to go wrong there.
But if you buy that first,
no, I think you got to start
hard.
with Kind of Blue.
You have
to start
But
with
what
Kinda
happens
Blue.
when you go to the record store and you ask for, and they don't have it, and they just want to make a sale, and it's a little guy or whatever with blue hair, and like, Miles Davis, and it's like, yeah, right here, and then they give you, there's a good chance Bitches Brew would be on this. I mean, it's all done now. I mean, it's all so different. But even like now with Spotify, when you look up a band name, they have the top tracks, and I generally will listen to the top tracks.
Yeah,
first.
just shuffle that out.
I'm like, I'll listen to those, right? And then, but then when I look at like a Miles Davis or Coltrane, I'm like, these are not the top tracks or even the top albums.
No, those albums, like
right.
when they recorded those albums, especially Kind of Blue, because that was kind of a revolutionary jazz album. It's the birth of like cool jazz, basically.
Oh, that was birth of modal jazz.
Yes, birth of modal jazz, which
he
was
already
cool
did the
jazz.
birth of cool.
Birth of cool was a different story.
Being birth of cool,
But it was kind of that start of the jazz that people think of when they listen to like Jazz FM.
Yeah.
Was that
what they want to
era.
hear when someone says, I want to hear some jazz.
Yeah, because
right?
Kind of
There's
Blue came out in like
jazzes.
59, I think, and that was really the start of that kind of era of jazz music.
Maybe there's three kinds that people want to hear, but they want to hear either like a vocal Frank Sinatra,
The crooning stuff, Ella Fitzgerald.
and then there's Kind of Blue kind of stuff where it's not too fast and whatever, and then they want to hear not Charlie Parker, but
Like
they want to
bop?
pretend they're like
bebop.
but like simplified bebop. Right?
Oh, like mainstream bebop.
Yeah, exactly, right? So they want to pretend they're down and cool and shot heroin, but they haven't.
Yeah, they'll listen to guys like Dizzy Gillespie and like think that's bebop.
Okay, but we can't put down Dizzy, because Dizzy.
I love Dizzy.
But you know what I mean?
But
That almost
Dizzy never
sounded
claimed to be a bebop
Yeah,
guy.
yeah.
Bebop was a big band guy.
Yeah.
And but people's ears
Yeah.
are more
That-
accustomed
yeah,
to Dizzy Gillespie than
Exactly.
somebody like Charlie Parker, which is insane.
It's so. Oh yeah, buying the wrong album. I know I've got a story.
Retailers have a responsibility, and if they put somebody onto the wrong album, it'll turn somebody off of that genre altogether. That's insane.
It's and then when they had like I don't know when it started happening. It was definitely the CD era where they have those really bad not compilations, but like releases and re-releases, and like especially with Hendrix, they just kept releasing anything. Like if Hendrix played one note somewhere in the studio, they would record a whole album around it. Mm-hmm. And it's like that. Not even Hendrix's guitar, right? So if you bought one of those, you're like, Hendrix sucks.
Yeah.
No, these guys suck.
Yeah, exactly. The production of this is terrible.
And it's he's not even on it, right? You got to listen to, because they were just grabbing anything and then re-recording it and making songs. They would write songs around it, right?
Around like an idea,
An idea
of a riff
that they
or
found
something.
on
That's scary, to think that your legacy can come to that.
But what are we gonna do with that guy, man? He only really released 3 albums.
Leave it. Let
Because
it just lie,
Nah, man. I don't know.
You want Jimmy to keep coming out with stuff even though it might be terrible.
No, but I do want, because he opened up the studio electrically and he was doing that, all this stuff. There's recordings that are there,
Like full thought out ideas, yeah.
which almost throws me back to this Get Back documentary that just came out recently, right? Like how
Still haven't watched it. Don't fuck this up for
okay,
me.
there's so much like bad jamming on it and writing and ideas and thoughts, right? So
Do we want a Jimi Hendrix documentary? Is that what you're saying? If they have that footage?
well, they tried and they got the guy from Outkast there.
Oh, that's a biopic. I mean, like actual footage of Jimi Hendrix doing the
I
shedding.
don't know if they have any of that. Like, I mean, because they've released everything, man. Oh, I don't know what happened there. And then the family's finally owns everything, but that was a mess. Like that. You know what? That should be a documentary.
Of the estate.
Jimmy died. Yeah, the estate, and then they released everything. So, like, I remember going Bob Babbitt, who is a huge Motown bass player. The guy. I mean, he's always called number 2 to James Jamerson. But I think he ended up being very even with him. But I'm like looking at his credit, he did a Jimi Hendrix album. I'm like, no, he didn't do a Jimi Hendrix album. Jimi Hendrix, although Jimi Hendrix had a lot of bass players, Noel and himself and whatever. But that was like, okay, well, I mean, I could go on forever with Jimmy, but it's just like, and then I'm like, oh, so they found these random tracks and pieces.
The
and
vaulted
they hired,
ones.
And they hired Bob Babbitt, who's a wise choice, and and another guitar player, and to try to emulate his sound and finish off the ideas.
Yeah.
That's terrible. But I think there's there was a lot of stuff. There's, tunes like Easy Rider, stuff that were recorded enough that just put that out there. Like Frank Zappa has got a whole whack of stuff.
Okay, but there's the difference. There's the difference that lies right there. Jimi Hendrix, I think every artist back in that day, in the 70s, late 60s, early 70s, wrote with the era of production they were in mind. So the gritty, buzzy kind of just natural room effect that you would get from being in that era of recording, you'd have that in your mind when you were putting a song together to make it appropriate for the record and the production style. Guys like Zappa, though, were a little bit ahead of the game, I find, when it comes, because Zappa didn't really write for anybody. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, they were still writing. Hendrix was writing for radio, but not writing for radio.
Yeah, like his stuff became like it just became for radio because of the fact that it was Jimmy, right? Like Zappa, you would never really hear Muffin Man on the radio. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that wasn't. Yeah,
But I think that played a huge part in how music was made, was just knowing how it was going to come out based on the quality of sound back then, and people wrote and arranged accordingly. So if you take Jimmy's licks now, or licks from then, and tracks that he probably was just screwing around on, and put today's production on it, it's never going to work the same. It's never going to work the same. They tried doing that with some Elvis tunes. They put them with like the Philharmonic Orchestra, or they put them with like a new arrangement for his songs. Sometimes it works because people will be duetting it or something like that. But like, you can't expect, I would never expect it to sound like they did like That's All Right Mama, let's say. And it's like, you know, they recorded that at Sun Records. Sun Records is like this little hole in the wall studio back then in 56. I'm not expecting, like, it'll always sound like he's singing out of a megaphone.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Why would I want a full production with, like, you know, everything clean, and then to just hear Elvis muffled in on this microphone over the track?
It's hard. I like the fact that they try it.
Yeah, I think that's
I really
cool.
think, I mean, music's all about going for it, I think. And sometimes you fails, right? I think what throws the fans off is the hype and the promotion and all that. Like they start getting getting you going, and I don't know, giving you a reach around early or something. I'm like, trying not to say, they're just.
Well, that's the thing, man. It's
Like,
that's the stupid part of it. Is like we had Jimmy.
Yeah.
We had him, and now you're teasing us.
Yeah. But Jeff Buckley, right? His album, they called it, sketches from,
Which is appropriate.
But that album, I didn't know when I first got it that was not his finished product.
Mm-hmm.
They finished it. I mean, but he had enough. I mean, he got enough of the recording done.
But they produced that shortly after his death, didn't they?
Well, because he was recording and then he passed away.
Right.
He drowned while
in the midst of
a
recording
break,
that.
right?
Yeah.
But he had enough done, and then, well, I mean, not to quote me or whatever, but they released it, and then, but I didn't realize they did it brilliantly, right? Like
Yeah,
they were
no, they
these
definitely
are
did.
sketches from My Sweetheart the Drunk, or I think that was the title, but I think the album was supposed to be called My Sweetheart the Drunk, and then they called it sketches. But he had enough recorded. Everything was there. It was all ready to go. But it's amazing. It's like, wow,
Yeah.
okay, right? And then Hendrix had enough of that stuff. And then they ruined it. But he definitely had, I would say, 2 nice albums, right? But and I'm okay with there's a Hendrix blues album with just him and guitar and whatever, and it's pretty real. Just release that. That's what I want. That's fine. Just be like, hey, this was May 26th, 1971, in the studio by himself.
Mm-hmm.
Here it is. Buy it or don't.
They do it for everybody else.
Just buy it or don't. Don't sugarcoat it, change it, add things, and
That was one of the good thing about torrent files. Do you remember torrent? Like when when you were torrent a file, you'd get all
I
these.
stopped buying music. No.
Well, you'd get.
No.
It's a file sharing thing for those of you that don't know.
Yeah.
But it was basically an opportunity where you could get this is where I heard I had this thing about listening to Elvis's outtakes, like take 42.
Yeah.
If I Can Dream, take 12, Suspicious Minds.
Yeah.
And it's not the finished product, but there were some cool things in there, and you notice the things that he would get frustrated with in what he was sounding like, and how the song turned into what it was in real time.
Wow, this is why you need to run off and watch the Beatles documentary.
I know, I have to.
And,
I know.
And you need to listen to Let
I
It
need
Be
30
Let
hours
It Be Naked.
Yeah, I need 30 hours in a day.
Have you ever listened to that yet? Like, so Let It Be.
I anytime any trailer or anything has come up, I turn it off immediately because I haven't watched it yet.
So obviously the movie's about making of that album and
Right.
whatnot, and then there's some Abbey Road stuff. But what was it? 10 years ago they released "Let It Be Naked,"
Mm-hmm.
and it was the great cover. And this was because they record all this stuff that's in the movie, and then I guess they got Phil Spector in after going, I don't know. And then Phil did all his stuff and
Mm-hmm.
added stuff and strings and stuff. And then they released Let It Be That Way for 40 years or 30 years. And then they came up with like, this is the way they originally recorded it without the strings and without the everything, which is now on here. Man, so cool, right?
Yeah.
All that, and it's funny because the gear in there,
Am I gonna giggle?
it's all coming back. Like it's all gonna we just wait. 2022 is gonna be.
Oh, as soon as people will want to buy that
It's
stuff
gonna be
because they'll think that's where the magic is.
all the tube amps. Again,
Yeah.
finally the Fenders and Paul's using a nice Fender stack. Oh my god, and all that, and the Rosewood Telly that they brought it out a bunch of years ago, maybe 3-4 years ago. Fender brought out the George Harrison. I don't remember if they called it the George Harrison, but it was a beautiful Rosewood Telecaster, which is very rare. That'll come back.
Yeah,
It's gonna
all
definitely
of
come
that
back.
stuff will for sure.
And
The more documentaries that come out with musicians from back then, they'll find a way to capitalize on it for sure.
But it's funny because it's them practicing, and what the problem is now. I think people don't understand. That's what's funny about the show is that is the worst way of rehearsing.
In
Nobody
studio
knew
or-
anything. Yeah, nobody knew anything. They were writing. Okay, this is the problem. What they're doing, I wish you saw it, because what they're doing is there's a part of them that's trying to get ready for a show, so they're like maybe throwing in a Chuck Berry tune or an
Are
old
they
tune.
prepping for the rooftop show?
They're prepping for the rooftop,
Okay.
right? And then, but they didn't know it was going to be a rooftop show. They were going to do a show,
Okay.
so they were trying to learn a couple old tunes and old rock and roll songs, and then bring back a couple songs, but also write some songs, and then but they're also they're always they weren't a touring band, so
Right.
it's like they were constantly writing, right? It's always
I do know that at a certain point they just solely wanted to stay in the studio because they couldn't really hear themselves when they were on stage. They didn't like playing on stage, right?
well, they show the PAs, and it's hilarious.
Do they?
They start off the show where they're the four of them, and they're singing, and then there's no microphones, right? They're sitting in a circle writing and just hanging. I'm like, oh my god! And then they bring out the PAs, the speakers,
Really?
like just these oh my.
Yeah, I
god.
gotta
Anyways,
watch it. I gotta watch it.
it might for me. There's something that irgs me, erg, and erg, and I mean, I play a lot. Thank God we're playing a lot more now and whatever. And I find, go to gigs and you get sound, whatever, you get your song list and everything. And then there's, you just show up and play, right? I'm playing, I got 3 gigs this weekend.
Right.
Well, yeah, and I don't think I rehearsed with any of them. You are one of them.
Yeah,
Right?
we're a pretty unrehearsed band. We're all hired guns in our own right, and I think that the trust factor of sending a set list out, chances are you're gonna know this song.
Yeah.
If you don't, I know you'll know it by the time you get to the gig, and then puzzle pieces just come together.
Right. And yeah, but what drives me crazy is just with rehearsals is when you show up to rehearsal, generally, there's 5 people in the band, or 6 people. Let's just say 6.
Mm-hmm.
3 of the people have practiced for the rehearsal, and 3 of the people are showing up to practice at the rehearsal.
Ooh.
Right? Learn tunes or whatever, and it's
Can you
drives me
explain to the
crazy.
people what the difference is between rehearsal and practicing?
See, when I think of rehearsal, I like. I like being prepared with everything in life. I like having things prepared. So, if you call me for a gig and say, "Oh, we're gonna have rehearsal Thursday and we're playing on Friday," cool. And then I'll be like, "Okay, what's the tunes?" And then I would hope that you would give me the tunes and the keys.
And the keys, yep.
And then we go to rehearsal and we run through things. And what I would like to happen at said rehearsal is we start the first song of the night, and we're gonna play it through perfectly, and then the second one, and then the third one. And then we're gonna all look at each other and say, okay, well, let's get the fuck out of here early because we obviously know what's going on. Let's look through the list. Let's figure some segues.
Talk it out.
Figure some. And then I might be like, that bridge and that song. Like, what are you doing? Oh, let's just fucking run it. Cool, right? And then so now a three set or two, or like, let's just say 2 hours of music instead of running through it at all. We could literally have it done in an hour,
Right.
with the proper people and just work out the important things and the weird parts and whatever. And if everybody's like really open, if I'm like, honestly, like I tried lifting the damn thing and this is what I got. What did you get? At this point, I don't even care what we're playing, if it's right or wrong, as long as we're playing the same, anything, right? Or like, it'd be cool if we swap song 4 with song 3 because song 2 could segue into song 4 better than song 3.
Yeah.
That's what I think a rehearsal is.
Yeah, it's sanding off the edges.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? Where there's a lot of people that are like, oh, cool. So you send the song now. Okay, I'm, to the guitar player, not our guitar player. Ian's fantastic, but a guitar player.
Ian.
And so you send them 2 hours of music, charts maybe, or whatever. I've been in situations where I've been given all the charts on top of it all.
Right.
So charts and everything. And Mr. Guitar Player goes, oh, cool. Closes, it's a book, but it's probably his laptop. So he closes the laptop.
You're right.
And doesn't open it again until rehearsal time.
Yeah.
It's like, no. Right? Like, no. I don't get that mentality. And then watching the Beatles documentary, I'm like, oh, okay. Nobody went home and practiced. Like, Paul definitely left his bass behind and everything. But then yet he shows up the next day and starts the long and
Wow.
and I'm like, I'm playing on the piano. So like, you're not fucking Paul McCartney.
Right.
You're not fucking gonna write Long Windy Road or Get Back or fucking Let It Be. So, we're not writing. Now, the difference is between a show rehearsal and a writing situation.
Oh, man.
That's a huge difference. Now we're going to look like the Beatles. Now,
yeah.
I've just started this new little project, and it's friggin' so exciting. I haven't talked about it yet.
No, you haven't.
Remember Mikey and his uke?
Yes.
In the uke thing? Mikey Hodden. So he calls me up. He's like, hey, let's get the band back together. I'm like... The internet band?
Yeah.
Because I've yet to meet you in person. And then even when he did the podcast, it was on Zoom. So he calls me up and Dean, who was the drummer that did a lot of them with us, and and he just got this inspiration to write a bunch of 8 tunes for Paige Kopp, who is the singer of Foolproof.
Yes.
And we featured one of Foolproof's songs, and you really need to go check out Foolproof. They put out another band. They put out another single very recently. Bass player just had a baby.
Oh,
yesterday
congratulations.
or today. Hendrix. He called him Hendrix.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah, I can't believe I just remembered all that, which is amazing. And so he'll know exactly what day it is we're talking.
On this day in music
on
history.
this day, Junior was born. But it's really cool. I mean, I probably shouldn't even be talking about it, but we've been getting together, just the 3 guys, and Mikey's been, and it's so it's like it's very poppy. It's kind of
Okay,
funky.
cool.
It's very, and it's out of my realm. I'm using a lot of pick,
Yeah.
a lot of downstrokes. It's like really, but of course we're going over there with empty. You know, like I walk in, I'm like, right, like okay,
And this is
that's
for
different
writing sessions,
because
right?
it's writing, and
Yeah.
he's written these tunes, and the amazing thing is some people, there's just he's one of them, and there's so many people that I've gone through that just write so fast. Like it just amazes me when it's like, maybe we need a bridge. Oh, okay.
Oh,
And it's
fuck,
like,
man.
and then
Bridges.
it's like, how did you think of that? Like, and then when the theory, because like we're schooled theory, like everything needs to make sense or whatever, or whatever. It just amazes me when people could just write like that. Paul McCartney's one of them. That's a different story.
Yeah.
When you're going for writing sessions and stuff like that, that's an open window, right? So when someone calls me for a band rehearsal to play a show, what is it? 7 to 9. Like there's like, okay, we got a 2-hour window to rehearse an hour of music, right?
Yep.
I think like that. Oh, writing session. Oh, okay. Well, all right. I'll see you at 1, and I'll leave when I leave, right?
Yeah, it's a weird atmosphere because like it's the unknown.
It's the unknown. And especially the fact that, like, especially with this band, Mikey and Dean, the drummer, is like friggin' redonkulous, and player and stuff. But they've known each other for a while. But like, and I've played a couple gigs with Dean beforehand. Then all this, right? So like, just that, like I've never met Mikey, now we're in a room and it's like, oh, here's these tunes, here are these things, right? Like are we gonna vibe in the same room? Like we vibe through, like, you send me chords and I played them and I sent them back, and then we made fun COVID videos. But
Yeah.
are we gonna vibe in a room together? Like,
Well, that's the thing, right? I mean,
who knows?
as
Like-
long as you keep in mind that those COVID videos were the catalyst to get you to this point, and he trusts you as a player, where it allows you a little bit more freedom.
yeah,
That's the thing, right? When musicians trust each other, it shouldn't be pressure. It should be freedom.
yeah,
To be able to say what you need to say and do what you need to do to make the song the best that it can be. So it's like when I do writing sessions, I have a tendency of scaring the other writers because I want to put everything in all at once. I need
Yeah.
another writer to tell me, sit down, simplify, So, I think the fact that he's bringing you on board is kind of like his way of saying, hey, I trust you, kind of like, simmer this down if it needs to be.
writing is like, so yeah, I mean, that's always the biggest compliment. Like, hire Manny, he'll fill in for a top 40 gig. Yeah, me and 100 other guys, right? Like, well, hire. It turns into hire whoever's free. But when someone's got a passion project, that is over the top for any musician to get the phone call.
Yeah.
They're just like,
It's a huge compliment.
Yeah.
Man. It's
It's
a
like-
huge compliment.
damn right, I'm down, right? Like, and I always feel like, even when I say yes, I don't say yes properly enough, right? Because I understand,
I
right?
get it,
It's like, I mean, I'll never be proposed to, so, and I feel like every time
That's the closest thing to it for
it's
us.
the closest
Yeah.
thing for a musician, a male musician, or I don't know.
Did you
Straight-
just cancel yourself?
2 cancels in fucking one show.
But I get what you're saying. It's
Right?
the highest for honor
Yeah.
that you can get as a musician. Forget the awards, forget all of that. But to be asked by another musician in a way of like, I trust you enough to make this creation turn into something.
Yeah.
Like that's a huge thing.
cool.
It's almost like they're asking you to help raise a child.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know, and I don't think we think of it that way. We're just kind of like, I think as the writer, we're just kind of like, oh, like this style fits into my bud over here that plays this, so I'm gonna call him, right? But I don't think the writer fully thinks that hard. I mean, there's the fake writer that likes to hire the name people in hopes that all the names bring
You're buying the
fame,
brand.
right?
You're buying the brand.
And that happened a lot. I mean, all those from 50s, 60s, and 70s. There's a lot of the same peeps playing. And when you're in that rotation of 8 hours a day in the studio, you're killing it. Like Carol Kay, man, just go girl, and whatever. Throw me charts, throw me in sandwich. Let's go.
Yeah.
Right?
Throw me charts. That's the name of my next album. Throw me charts, throw me a sandwich. That is the name of my next album and possibly the full name of my first child. Let's take a break.
All right.
We'll be right back. Hey guys, Daniel here from Behind the Hooks. Just wanted to take this time to let you know about Buzzsprout. Buzzsprout is who we use here on our show to distribute our show to all the platforms that we can, Spotify and all that fun stuff. Follow the link in the description and the show notes, and it gets you a $20 Amazon gift card if you sign up for a paid plan, and it helps support our show, which is pretty great. That would be nice. We use it. It's been nothing but great. It's super easy to use. The customer support and the help that I've gotten because I am tech dumb has been nothing but incredible. If you want to upgrade, Buzzsprout has tons of guides to help you find the right equipment at the right place. Just start with some gear, a quiet place, and you can literally upload a podcast from anywhere. You'll get real great looking podcasts because of the website. The website is super sleek and it's really nice. It's nice to have a hub for people to go to if they just want to listen to your show. It's not hard if you have the right partners. The team at Buzzsprout is passionate about helping you succeed. I've experienced this firsthand. We had a previous show that I didn't have access to, and I was worried about it kind of convoluting the market a little bit. So the fact that we can run side by side is absolutely amazing. Join over 100,000 podcasters already using Buzzsprout to get their message out to the world. Your message is important, and Buzzsprout is here to help you get it out there. We use it, we love it, and we know that you guys will love it too. So, like I said, there's some incentives behind it. Go ahead and check out the link that I'm going to be putting in the description and the show notes. Now, let's get back to the show. On this day in music history. On this day. Well,
I got a special one today.
you're gonna take this one.
Yes, it's a today on this day, which is not today when you're watching it or listening to it, but
Yeah.
it's right before I came on my way to come up here, I heard that Robbie Shakespeare passed away. Who, one of the greatest reggae bass players ever
Yeah.
to pass away, and it was funny, like the ride up. Just kept thinking like how much impact he did have on me. To segue a little bit, when I got out of Humber and I was like, I'm going to be a musician, and I got my diploma, and then there was no gigs. So
Surprise!
what do you do? Right. So what I did actually at that point in my life was I started learning a full album a day. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go through the guys I really like, and whoever they were. And because being so embraced in jazz for so long, I almost forgot how to play rock and roll.
Yeah.
Right.
That
And
happens.
stuff. So I just went back. I started, okay, I'm going to learn a whole Metallica album because I love Cliff Burton so much. I'm going to learn Chili Peppers. I'm going to, Beatles all the time. All their, whatever. Right. And then I went into reggae. And, at that point of, my life, I was, everybody's, where I'm white. So, Bob Marley, right? And,
Yeah.
and as a bass player, I'm so lucky that, Family Man was, so amazing. that like he's not faking it.
Yeah.
You know, they definitely changed Bob Marley when he got signed, big time. I don't know if you know this, but like Catch a Fire, which was I guess their first major release, they released a whack years later after Bob's death. Kind of like the Beatles' Naked album, they released the original recordings of Catch a Fire, which was real, you know, reggae, Jamaican reggae. Like,
Yeah.
You know, like it wasn't chopped into bars of eights and all that stuff, right? And I was like, whoa, you know, like that's...
So what do you mean by like not chopped in bars? Are you talking more freeform, or are you talking?
Yeah, just more the way reggae. I mean, reggae is really like. I mean, I've got a weird thing with reggae and a bunch of. Oh my god, let's see how deep I could go. But but reggae, like you know, like we all, and I always call it white reggae, Bob Marley, because we just they cleaned it all up. There's a whole like actual Catch a Fire documentary that you should watch.
I should watch that. That's wow. That sounds great.
And they talk about how they literally, you know, white man came and whited it up, right? Like made it more easy.
Symmetrical. They made it symmetrical.
And into sections and more to the point and less jamming, right? And then as I was looking further into reggae, although Family Man still kicks my ass, even like, oh my God. I mean, he's so musical. When I think like, there's two kinds of reggaes to me. There's reggae, and then there's anything that Robbie and Aston, Family Man played on. Like those guys took bass to a different level. Now, of course, recently, like, there's a whole bunch of other guys that have learned from them and as I did. But those guys, man, like, I almost feel like Robbie didn't create dub bass, but he definitely
influenced it.
He made it better. He was into effects and stuff. And a weird thing that I just learned today was that Robbie was like, you know, just some kid in Jamaica and whatever, and you know, playing some drums maybe a little bit, and then Family Man ended up in his backyard somehow. I guess that's what they do. Yeah. He was selling some weed on the side. This is all pre Bob Marley, and got him into bass. As soon as he heard him play, he was like, "Whoa, I want to play that." And then when he got the Bob Marley gig, he gave Robbie his gig in the band that he was playing with. And I was like, whoa, that makes so much sense in so many ways, right?
It's amazing how, like, I don't want to pigeonhole him because Robbie was very versatile. Like, he played everything. He was a monster of a player. And the fact that he was able to kind of, you knew there was a signature to his sound, but he didn't flush out the track. So just to give examples of the kind of versatility that he had. So yes, he was a master reggae bass player, but he played studio and on stage with people like Madonna, Bob Dylan, No Doubt, Peter Tosh, Rolling Stones, and Grace Jones. Yeah. That's a big
Cyndi
span.
Lauper,
That's
like
a
it just
big span.
It's so amazing because like in the 80s, reggae became very big. You know, the Brits and Talking Heads, and they all had these influences. And then Sinead O'Connor hired Robin Slide to back them up, and I think go on tour too. If I'm correct, I think they went on tour with her. And it's like, they were brilliant. Someone, I guess, I don't know who it was, but was like, oh, let's hire the originals. Or I get they weren't originals, but let's hire the guys. And what was so brilliant about them was that they were drum and bass.
Right.
They were so tight. They put out so many albums. instrumental with guest vocals, like, and taking dub to another level, and it's so amazing. And it's weird. Like today, what really got to me was like, oh man, like I forgot about him in some ways. I listened to a lot of Black Roo. I know I'm probably saying that wrong, and that was very like. See, what kind of happened too was in the 90s and stuff. There were like raves and stuff, right? And then you would go to these jungle raves and kind of like reggae raves, and the reggae stuff was just it's just too much when you're on substances, right? And it was just like, and like most people could take it, right? But as a musician, as a bass player, and you're like, like a lot of times you're lifting as you're listening, or trying to, or whatever. It really like it was too much because it was like too repetitive for too long. It's all it's all the substance's fault, but playing that stuff, I love it because I could just do it. I was like, oh yeah. What I like about reggae, it really makes you take a step back. But then what I like about a guy like Family Man, for instance, he lets you step out, right, and play melodically. And Robbie had that, and not every bass player's had that. And especially when you go on vacation, you're like, you're not going to find many Family Men playing at the local hotel.
Right. Well, what I know of reggae is, and I don't, consider myself necessarily a connoisseur of reggae music as much as I do love what I hear when I do listen to, Peter Tosh and everything like that, is, bass leads.
It does.
It drives the tune, and it creates the form right then and there in real time. It kind of it has the bass creates the segue points and just like moves the song, right? So,
and generally simple,
and
low, right? Like
you feel it in your gut.
You should, you could play reggae on 1 or 2 string bass,
right. Yeah, and so for Robbie to be in this statistic, 17 out of 50 best bass players in the world. Would you consider that accurate, or is your biases taking you to like more of the top 10?
Oh, well, one, I think I'm just happy he made the list for being such a.
Was he that underground? Like, was he that unknown?
Yeah,
I
mean,
player?
It depends what year you asked that question, right? Because then, like, as you could see, like, when we said, like, Sting, Cyndi Lauper, Sinead O'Connor, like, that was a small window where he became popular again.
Right.
As a sign, like, and then prior to that, but there's these windows, right? Like, or 1995 on, let's just say, like, who would know him other than bass players or
right? Yeah,
or
people
real
who
musical
who are really looking at the liner notes,
right? Like, I mean, I'm a liner notes guy. That's what I love about records is that they were on the record.
You can actually
on the
see
CD,
them.
You can't, like, you couldn't open it and forget about Spotify. They don't tell you anything.
I wish Spotify made a liner notes section.
Oh, come on,
that would be
They're not
great.
paying the fucking people. At least fucking give them credit. Like,
yeah, I think that would be a cool thing to have on a streaming service. And I think any streaming service that happens to find their way through the depths of the internet and accidentally types in Behind the Hooks and listens to this, I think a great feature to have on your streaming service is the opportunity to really dive into the credits. Amazon Prime, like music, I think would be the best thing, because if you watch Amazon Prime, if you pause the movie you're watching, it'll tell you everybody that's on screen.
oh,
And I think that if you're listening to a song and you happen to be on that track and just hit the hamburger kind of thing, and all the players on that track will be there. And it's literally just like merge it with Discogs or merge it with, another credit site service where you can actually see who composed, who arranged, who played, Who engineered? Things like that. Make a liner notes section for the songs that you stream. I think if anybody's going to do it, it's going to be Amazon. I really do. I don't think Spotify will take the time. Maybe Apple Music, but at the end of the day, I think Amazon's got a really cool interface for their service. They just don't have enough tunes, which sucks. Yeah.
Because I bought like being a bass player, and I know drummer guys like. I went on a huge Paul Jackson kick and stuff like it's like, oh, Paul Jackson's on this, I'm buying it, right? And I've got this one album, can't remember what it's called, but there's like 2 tracks on it. That's just like it's like so funky and it's so Paul Jackson, and the rest of it he was just playing whatever, and it's kind of a jazz thing, it's kind of whatever. But still, like I would just keep listening to those 2 tracks, right?
Yeah.
I don't care. And I bought them, at a used record shop before records became cool again. Where now everything's so expensive. Oh my God.
Yeah, no, it's nuts.
It's so weird.
When you're listening to tracks, you just gave me a thought. When you're listening to tracks and you do those re-listens, I have when I'm listening to a track for a first time, if I'm looking to produce something, I'll listen to it once. And do like a recall thing, things that I remember, things that stick out that could potentially be a hook, right? But if I'm listening to a track to learn, let's say, or even for enjoyment, just a track.
Oh, those are 2 different things?
They are 2 different things. Okay. So say for enjoyment, right?
Enjoyment,
and then we'll go behind it. When you're listening to a track for enjoyment, what are the things you're listening for? And what are the things that surprise you when you're listening to a track?
Yeah, for enjoyment, you have it's so random what I like. I grew up, growing up in Woodbridge, just beats everywhere. Being a bass player, I like a good friggin' bass line.
So is that where your ear automatically wants to go, or are you now listening to the arrangement of it all?
For me, when it becomes just like if I'm out and I'm standing at a bar and there's music on the radio or at a dance club or whatever, I remember Gwen Stefani saying, because remember they were No Doubt and they were a band, and then they went really poppy.
That's right.
What happened was they would play a gig as No Doubt, and then they would hit an after party or an all night club and the raves and whatnot. And she was like, I want to be on this radio now. Mm-hmm. So they started getting really dancey.
Yeah.
Right. So for me, when I listen to a song, you just got to feel good. So today I taught an Olivia Rodrigo song. For the life of me, I can't remember. And I was like, Rodrigo. Oh my God. I'm like, this song it's about breaking up or something. But it was like so like Avril Lavigne meets like new pop. It's like, oh my God, is this like pop punk? No, not yet, right? Like
not yet.
It's like it never gets there. It wants to get there and stuff like that.
But
and I'm like,
that's a perfect description of pop music today. It's like it's very close to something
that you liked back in the day. Not even that I was an Avril Lavigne fan or something, but so for enjoyment, I don't really care about. It just needs to make me feel good and not. Because I find
well, then what makes Manny feel good?
It just gotta
give me an example.
Just gotta give me a vibe. So it could be friggin' ABBA. It could be Olivia Rodrigo. It could be Avril Lavigne. Maybe it could be Alanis Morissette. I don't care, as long as I'm like, if it's making my head bounce, it doesn't ruin my moment. Where I'm finding, I'll tell you a perfect example. We played at the OV. Whatever, a bunch of weeks ago. And we ended the night, and then they put on the house music, and I was like, and then there was a couple people dancing. What offended me was the same people dancing for us, and they knew the lyrics, and it was just this weird, repetitive garbage, and not even words. Like, I'm sure there were some words.
Yeah.
So that, stuff like that, like, I'm okay with all music. Like, like I said, as long as it makes me feel good, as long as it makes my situation feel better, it shouldn't take away from my situation.
Okay.
That song took away from my situation. There's the weirdest songs that I absolutely love because it reminds me of something in a moment, or it just because for me it needs to make me like music's supposed to make me feel good. Right. So I go into these things like right now I'm kind of off music. I'm getting back into it again, but I'm like in the car and stuff. I'm off it because I'm just like, everything like you just like, and it usually starts with the radio now because the radio is so bad.
Yeah.
Right. And it's not bad per se. It's just I've listened to the songs they're playing on the classic rock. I've heard them a million times, and then I'm like, okay, well, I understand this is track 1, but what about track 2 and 3 and 4 on this album? Right, like or whatever, right? And then the bunch of the new music's terrible, and then I don't know, whatever. Like it just gets me going. Like I just get on and off. So don't take away from my vibe is my biggest thing.
You kind of had a really good point there without it actually being the point. The importance of understanding that there are times where musicians are off music. A lot of musicians I know, ourselves included, will have pockets of time where we're not listening to music. There's like, we'll listen to podcasts. The things we're listening to don't equate what we're playing because just sometimes your brain needs that break. And there's nothing out there that's like that, unless it's a new release of a band that you really like, or your curiosity is taking you there and you really have to listen to it. And it's like, you need to go there, or if you're learning tunes. But there, I'm right now off music. So like I'm not listening to a lot of music right now just because I don't know if it's from the amount that I've been gigging and learning new tunes and what happens with me. I don't know if this happens with you, but if I listen to new music, I start internalizing it, and then it takes away from the music I've been learning, and I start like melding things together that shouldn't be melded, and it's like I start screwing with arrangements. So right now I'm off music so I can focus on my writing stuff. Yeah. And I don't want to take anything that I've been listening to into the songs that I've been writing. Yeah. So I want our listeners and viewers to understand that just because we're playing music doesn't necessarily mean we're listening to a lot of music at that time. And just because we're off music doesn't mean we don't like music. Yeah. It just means our brain needs that little bit of a break, and then we end up, diving back into it. But that's a really, really important thing. Yeah. It's not always on. It can't be. That's exhausting.
I physically will be like, okay, this drives me crazy. And then I'll be like, what style of music haven't I listened to that might resurge my love for music, right? Or something, right? So that's where pulling out reggae or pulling out big band music or pulling out, and the most random thing might, bring me back to that. I'm constantly writing in my notes, like when I watch a documentary or, they said this band or that band or, reading interviews or actually, it was this great thing with the bass player Justin, who played with 9 Inch Nails and Beck, and then now he's on tour with that lovely woman, and they're friggin' making really cool music right now. She was on Saturday Night Live and she killed it 4 months ago. Okay. But he reminded me of a punk band, Gang of Four. And I'm like, oh my God, I've never checked these guys out. And this is not the first time I heard the name. Like, Joan Alderette likes them. It's just a certain age group of LA dudes, session guys, that keep bringing up this band. And then I listen, I'm like, oh my God, Gang of Four. Like, everybody go check them out. The bass, and I could see why the bass players like them. The bass is so heavy. It's like, it's punk with really good players, with a bit of, there's anger.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the Rage Against the Machine of the time, but not so, not even so political in some ways, right? Because I always think of Rage Against the Machine like they're like a punk band that really learned their pentatonic scales and blues scales and really know how to play together.
Learn your blues scales. Learn your blues scales.
Like, oh my God. I loved teaching, like, especially in the early 2000s or whatever, when they were like killing it, because it was like, well, here you go. Once you learn the blues scale, you like
You're
minor
there.
pentatonic. I'm like, oh, bomb track.
Yeah.
You know? This is a guy who really learned the minor pentatonic scale, and this is where the intro's from. And then they go to an F sharp blues scale.
Yeah.
And it's just like, you know, it's like that's all the notes they're using. And then he got some cool effects, right? And then
Shit,
got an angry singer.
The intro for our show is a major pentatonic scale. That's literally who it is. Da-ga-da-da, da-ga-da-da, da-ga-da, ga.
Well, it's funny because like it's like I hear a lot of guys like trash the pentatonics, jazz guys trash the pentatonics, and then it's like, and then you know, then I hear Jocko play the pentatonics, you know, and I'm like, okay, I'm nowhere right now. Like, this guy's playing it too fast. I think this guy's mad because everybody's playing it too slow and making $1 million.
Look, I like
This
a good
guy's
pentatonic scale, man. Like when it's done, I love when it's done blatantly. Songs like My Girl, right?
Yeah,
when it's done blatantly like that.
But those guys were lucky, Stevie Wonder, those guys, because it wasn't done before that.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
You know, like My Girl, you couldn't come out with that lick right now today.
Yeah.
And that's what pisses me off, because I'm like,
Just easy.
Oh.
1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 8. That's it. Dum, 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 dum. That's it.
that's it.
That's it, man.
It's like,
And even Superstition is just like minor pentatonic scale in E flat.
oh, that guy, forget about it.
It's minor pentatonic scale in E flat.
Sir Duke with the blues scale, like it's just like in every octave, like it's just like,
Yeah, he does 2.5.
do I do is this, and like it's just like, so what Stevie was, no, someone will correct me, but it's like what he did was he took it out of one octave.
Well, that's the thing,
right?
Yes, you're right.
And then he turned them into these licks.
Yeah.
Right? Where everybody else was like you said, My Girl was one, you know, do. And it's like, oh, you're gonna stop at the octave. Okay.
Yeah.
Stevie's like, fuck that. I'm gonna play it a little bit over here, right? And I'm not gonna climb up and down. I'm gonna play sections and whatever. And that like
I love Stevie's lead ups. He has cool lead ups, you know, between his phrases.
Yeah.
So for Sir Duke, you know, and you go off time on that, and it's like like just those little repetition things. It's like how much of that was just like you improvising and then liking that lick? How much of that was preemptively thought out? It's like I need to know.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah.
Because it's a perfect horn lick, but you could tell it was written on a piano.
Oh yeah. There's no doubt that he wrote it on a piano.
Yeah. It's the perfect
And then he
horn
wrote
lick.
it and he's like, this would sound great on a horn line. But there's like, it's the perfect horn line.
Yeah. And even like I Wish, the bass line for that, it's a piano bass line.
Yeah.
Like it's written on piano for sure.
Yeah.
But it was meant for bass. It was meant for bass.
Is it like, I mean, he was part of like, I mean, now we have every sound at our fingertips and I don't think we're not using them properly. Some guys are, right? Where he would get a whole new keyboard that makes this sound and then it'd be like, where he actually thought like it's just like, this is my piano and this is my bass player hand, right? And they're in two little levels. Like, I wonder if that really, I mean, whatever, Stevie's friggin' Stevie. But
yeah.
I wonder if just that alone, right? Because now everything's here.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not here, right? Where
there's something
this you watch Buddy from Yes and Genesis and it's like, I want that sound and I'm gonna give it instead of like
Dream Theater Jordan Rudess with the whole like 360 keyboard.
Like all those guys,
Yeah.
all the greats, Rick Wakeman, like all those psychos that changed music as in rock, you know, like you know, even John Lord, like, you know, just like more than one.
There's something to be said about levels.
Yeah.
There's something to be said about separation.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not the greatest keyboard player, but when I was separated mine to do bass in left hand and comping in the right.
It tells you what to do. Your
It's-
body is telling you what to do.
That separation was really important. I have a harder time, doing a split keyboard
Oh yeah.
and like not playing like a piano player with my left hand when everything's on a level, where that separation allows me to like isolate. And it's like brain, think bass, brain, think keys, right?
So the same thing with bass, and like when you start tapping,
Right.
all of a sudden you're thinking as these two as one and one chord, right? So you're going like you're going to maybe obviously above the octave and whatnot. My hands are up in the air for the people listening.
He's literally air playing what he's
Right?
talking about.
But it's like all of a sudden I start thinking as a piano player. I start thinking of more than
interesting.
root, just root, or like root and notes and like root note and bass line, right? When you start tapping, that's why I really got into tapping for a really short period of time, was because I was like, oh, that's how chords sound, because bass players don't really, think that way. And it was like, finally, it's like, oh, like one note at a time,
and you're
arpeggiating.
just screwing around with inversions, screwing around with arpeggiation and stuff like that. That's actually really neat.
Right. And I think, I think that's where, I don't know. I just think like if you change things up, that's when things will happen. And Stevie had certain keyboards that did certain sounds, and he was like bass, and then he was just so brilliant. Like, this is a great bass line, and and because his hand was playing bass sounds and on a bass sounding keyboard instead of just a patch.
Yeah, I always liked
Right.
the my favorite setup is baby grand or grand piano, keys on top, keys to the side. So like you'll have like your grand piano and a synth string up here, or something like that, and then you'll have a Rode or like a vocoder or talk box on this keyboard facing the audience. But I always liked that setup where you have like two tier one, where you can like kind of lay under pads on this one, strings on this one, and comp with your baby grand piano. There's a lot you can do there, and I saw Stevie do that. I can't remember if he had one on top of his piano, but he did that for Live at Last, live in London, that DVD that he came out with, which was like he had his grand piano, and then he had this where he ran his talk box, and his Rhodes were all on this, and his clav were all on that keyboard too. Again, that separation is really cool.
Yeah.
I really, really like that. And it's it's eye candy too.
Yeah.
It really is eye candy. It's just a bitch to set up if you're doing it on your own.
Yeah, well, they're not, right?
They are definitely not. But yeah, I like that. This is a good indication of like what we actually go through, like the thinking process of listening, or the how much listening is practicing, and how sometimes you can't always be practicing, but for us, we can't really turn it off.
Yeah.
So it's like sometimes you need to take a break from music, especially if you're working on other projects too. And it's like you need that part of your brain to kind of like be focused on that. Hence the reason why I don't listen to music at night.
Yeah.
Oh man, I did it once, like a couple months ago, or even during COVID, because like I got nothing to work up for. You know what I mean? So started listening to music at night, no sleep. Zero sleep, dude. When I tell you I got 3 hours in 5 days, I got 3 hours of sleep in 5 days just because my brain was constantly working, constantly getting out of bed, go to the studio, turn on the studio, which took about 10 minutes to do, and then like sit at the piano and like, try and hash something out. I was like, I'm the worst bedmate to have because I'm constantly getting up. I'm either having to pee or having to write. Like, anywho, that's it.
Wow. Merry Christmas.
That's all we have to say.
Is it Christmas?
I don't know. Probably
day
is.
is it?
We'll just say Merry Christmas for the next 3 episodes we record, and hopefully one of them's right. If it is, have a great holiday, and we'll see you on the next session.
Thanks for listening.
Behind the Hooks. With Manny DeGrandis.